Welcome to the Energetically You podcast, where we will be talking about healthy habits, abundant mindset, and optimal wellness. I'm your host, Megan Swan, creator of the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. At 30, I sold everything and went on my own eat, pray, love journey, if you will. And now, at 41, I'm still on my first stop here in Mexico, loving life and feeling more energy than ever before. This podcast is for ambitious women who are looking to level up their energy so that they feel happier and more productive throughout their day in all of their projects and passions. Inside, we are going to be talking about ways to truly tune in to our minds and bodies in new ways to leverage our natural energy sources. So let's dive in. Welcome back to Energetically You. I'm here today with Nathi Toro. She is a plant-based chef and educator, and she's passionate about nutrition and women's health. She has a really interesting story surviving cancer through plant-based living, and I'm so excited to dive in and hear more about the details. Nathi, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here and teaching a little bit more about what I've been going through and my journey through plant-based. I'm excited.
Amazing. Can you tell us the short or the long version of how you became so in tune to plant-based eating, or where you even heard about it first?
It was about probably like 12, 14 years ago, more or less. I heard it from a coworker. She was vegan, and we were both working towards we were doing our bachelor's in biology to go into med school. And she's like, oh yeah, this whole vegan thing. And I was like, no, I'm a meat eater. I'm Colombian. Like, no, that doesn't happen. My dad will probably disown me if I tell him I'm vegan. And she's like, well, you should try it. It's really good. So I remember I did my first vegan encounter with her for about a week. She would cook for me and bring it to the workplace, and we will eat together. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And at the time, I was probably on my third year of college. And then, long story short, I decided to move along to apply to med school. So I took a year off to study for the MCAT. And within that year, a lot of things happened. I had precancerous cells in both my breast and my ovaries, which was kind of crazy because no one in my family has cancer. Then I developed an autoimmune disease of the thyroid. So I have Hashimoto thyroiditis since I was 22. And then it just kind of hit me oh my God, what am I going to do? And obviously I wanted to become a doctor. I believed in medicine, and I worked in medicine since I was 16. So I knew that was the only way I knew, I guess. And I remember my friend saying that she had also gone, her family had gone through some cancer issues in the past, and how having an alkaline diet, I was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And then I go to my doctor, and my endocrinologist sent me a medication that I looked over the side effects, and I'm like, I can't take this. And then my oncologist is like, well, we need to go through a hormonal therapy, which I actually had to do. But at that point, I switched my diet completely to plant-based. And it was probably the combination of both. I have to be completely, I don't know at this point, but what I know is that the cancer never came back. It never actually developed into breast cancer, because she's like, you're going to have cancer in the next 2 to 3 years. And to hear this at 22, you're like, okay, what do I do? I want to be a mom. How does that even work? And so trying to navigate through all of that was a bit of a hassle, but I think what got me through it was wanting to eat better and getting there early enough that I was able to move forward from actually developing cancer. And the hormonal treatment obviously didn't help with my thyroid, and that was another issue. So it was interesting. It was a lot of stress. I decided not to go to med school. I went back to my home country for a bit. I, in the meantime, kind of started studying plant-based nutrition and just kind of like trying to figure out if I like that. And I didn't even cook, to be honest. I hated cooking. My mom was the one that cooked at home, and I was like, oh God, no, I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m. every day cooking for the family. That was what I saw from my mom. And little by little, it just kind of like, all right, I had to, because no one in my family cooked plant-based. And then when I moved to Colombia, I started cooking, and I started getting calls from different restaurants, because I was posting, stuff on like different magazines and stuff. They're like, why don't you just come and do a class here? And people were taken by my story, and I was like, sure. So I would go and kind of like teach my story. I wasn't telling people like, you need to eat this or do that, because this is what helped me. It was more like intuitively like sharing my story, basically. And yeah, that's how I kind of got into like moving forward to plant-based. And I studied gastronomy in Colombia. Then I came back. I studied plant-based cooking at Matthew Kenny Culinary at the time. And yeah, became an instructor, traveled all over the world. And here we are now, 10 years later, still cancer-free and still teaching a lot of plant-based and more into intuitive eating for sure, teaching more of that, not restricted diets or anything. And yeah, it's been quite the journey for sure.
Amazing. So many things I want to ask you about that and that story. So where to start? I think, can we start with the cultural differences? Because I'm Canadian and I live in the south of Mexico, which I would say all Mexican culture is very meat-based, but there are also some very whole food, plant-based themes that run through the cuisine and are a benefit, I would argue, to the average American or Canadian diet in terms of processed foods. Like most people eat a lot more home-cooked foods, and I'm sure it's the same in Colombia, but what resistance, like let's start with your dad, for example, or in your own family, like what was the response and what has the shift, if any, been in the last 10 years?
I remember my mom wasn't even surprised. She's like, oh, I was vegetarian your whole pregnancy. I was like, oh, that makes sense. My dad was like, what are we going to do? We do barbecues on Sundays every weekend. Like, what am I going to feed you? And I'm like, well, we can just like do portobello burgers. She's like, what the hell is portobello? I'm like, okay, Dad, let me teach you. So I started teaching my family, and my dad was very resilient to vegetables because he always thought that vegetables didn't sit well with him and he didn't like them. And I guess for him, a vegetable is just tomatoes. And I'm like, well, Dad, that's a fruit. But okay, beyond the point, and maybe avocados for guacamole. Other than that, not much. Very heavily meat-based. Lots of fish. Growing up, we did a lot of fish. But it took a while. My brother went for a period. My brother's younger than me by 12 years. So for a period of time, he was like, oh my God, this whole plant-based thing, I love it. I'm going to change. And then he went plant-based for about 2 months and he was 15. So it was like, all right, I give him that. And my dad was very skeptical. My dad was like, I will eat vegetables if you cook them. So I made it a mission to like put more vegetables into my dad's. Every time I'm with my family, I try to put a lot more vegetables. And I think it was probably about, I want to say 4 years ago. Yeah, before I moved to Spain, we had a full-on plant-based Thanksgiving dinner. And my dad was like, what is this? Like, he would not believe it. And I remember the first time I did, because I was into triathlons for a while, and the first time I did a half Ironman, he was the only one. My mom was in Colombia. My dad went with me. And when I finished, he's like, I thought you weren't going to make it because you don't eat meat. Like, that was the perception. He's like, you won't, like, how? It was like 6.5 hours of like strenuous exercise. Like, you're doing crazy cardio. And he was like, I mean, take my hat off to you because I didn't think you would do it. So those little changes, seeing how obviously from having those test results. And I think it's also a lot of like the mind, how it plays in your head. Like when I got the results and I was like, wait, like no one in my family has cancer. Like how come I had cancer? And I started digging a lot into my psychology and like, what was it that triggered that in my body? Because no female in my family has ever had cancer. It's like, how is it that my body if it's genetically, then it has to be environmental. It has to be stress. So then I started looking and doing like a checklist down to like see, okay, what is it that was triggering me? And for sure, a lot was the diet. When we came to the States, I was 15, and it was like peanut butter and jelly was like my thing. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we will eat like chug it, like the peanut butter with my sister, to the point that I can't even eat peanut butter anymore. Like I can't even see it. But we got into like the typical standard American diet, and going to high school, and my mom will pack lunch for us. And I was like, I'm not eating lunch. Like I'll eat whatever lunch they give me at school. And those things obviously made it even worse. And to top it off, when you arrive to this country, don't really know the language fully, and then trying to navigate through university and how to apply. So it was a lot of stress for a 15, 16-year-old trying to navigate. And I think all of that made my body just kind of go crazy. Mm-hmm. And so now it's been like my dad eats a lot more vegetables. The whole family eats a lot more vegetables. When I'm here, I'm like pushing it. Like I made, plant-based burgers. I made falafels the other day with plantains. Like I try to make like things that we use in our regular cooking to things that my dad would be like, I'm not eating that. And then it's like, he tries it and it's like, oh my God, like we eat yuca, cassava, like crazy in our country. And it's like, wow, we can do different things with cassava. So I was making tortillas, and he's like, how can you make a tortilla out of cassava? And I was like, you just blend it and it's easy. And so like he gets like taken by that. My mom is all for it. So she's like, teach me this, teach me that, so I can do it when you're gone. And so it's been fun. Obviously it's a challenge because of the culture. And when you go back to a heavily meat eating country like Colombia, and when you go to a restaurant and the vegetarian option is chicken, and you're like, mm-hmm. And they give you a salad and it's like icebergs, lettuce, and onion and tomato. That's it. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's been a fun challenge. I was able to open a restaurant in Colombia, and I had it for about 5 years. So that was fun, teaching, the community and the city where my dad is from to like, okay, you can eat delicious food and it doesn't have to be heavily meat, and yeah, so it's been an interesting process to learn with my family, to learn with myself, to adapt through, traveling so much, because I do travel a lot. And sometimes it's like I can eat extremely healthy, quote unquote, and I'll explain a little bit why I say quote unquote. I can eat super, super healthy. And sometimes it's like, well, I eat whatever is available. And whatever is available doesn't mean that it's unhealthy. It's just not what I will eat every day, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, I have a similar perspective in that, for me, it's also part of intuitive eating, that I consciously don't use the label vegan for myself, or like even trying to suggest that anyone should be that. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but I feel like it's a limiting label, whereas plant-based is a lot more inviting, if you will, and people can apply it with the percentage of plant-based that makes sense for them, and over time tend to go more and more plant-based. But I'm curious, for you, have you been through stages where you felt like you were vegan and then you relaxed a little bit, or what was your journey?
100%. When I started, I was like, I'm going to use the term that my therapist used on me when I was explaining this to her. Because when I went through the pre-cancers, like I was seeing a therapist, obviously, because I didn't know what to do. Like I'm navigating through all of that, and my family didn't know. Like it was kind of hard to like get the family all together. Like I didn't want too many opinions on that regard. It's like, it's my nutrition, it's my health, it's my body. Like I want to treat it privately. Mm-hmm. They knew, obviously, but I was like, I don't want any opinion as to like, what am I supposed to be doing? And I became a strict vegan for at least 4 years. And I had a mission. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I've seen the research. I'm going to cure myself. And this is the end of the story. And then I became a raw vegan for about a year. And that was intense. Wow. And I was in between traveling to Colombia and Miami. And it got to the point that I was too obsessed with it. And I was I had orthorexia, which was like the obsession of everything having to be perfectly organic, vegan, healthy. Would not enjoy a meal out, would not enjoy a meal with family because I didn't know if they put what type of oil do they use. I was too crazy with my diet at some point and it was not healthy. And that's when it kicked in. When I came back to the States, I opened another restaurant here in Miami, and it was a full-on plant-based restaurant. And it went really well. But at that time, I was in the restaurant full-time, and I would see, the clients ask me a lot of questions, like, how do I go about this? How do I do this? And it was really nice to be able to, be compassionate enough with them. And then they were mirrored to myself as to how much I needed compassion for my own body and not be super strict at all times. So then obviously I gave up the raw vegan diet and became eating more cooked foods, which obviously I needed. But I was like, well, no, the raw vegan is what's going to save me. And it wasn't really the food, which it is medicine, but it was the whole system, the mentality, the emotions, the spirituality, everything. It's one. And you can't really take them apart. And so I had to learn all of that. And then I moved to Spain, and then I moved to Germany. And then it was the things that I will find here, I couldn't find them there. How do I navigate through this? And yes, I've had my periods. My first 2 years in Europe, I was, super vegan. I had the privilege to traveling with a client to Greece last year, and it was impossible to eat fully vegan. We were in tiny islands with 100 people, and they're we couldn't find a bunch of stuff. We will eat a lot of vegetables, but some of the stuff that we would have, that we found, had either feta cheese that they made there, and it was we're eating this, and I will pick out of it, but it's well, it is what it is. We're here. And I never, in the process of traveling with clients, I just gave in and all right, this is what we're doing. I challenged one of the things that I learned from intuitive eating, the food police. That's it. It was I kind of took the power away from food and gave it to myself. And that was the most freeing thing I've done over the past 2-3 years. It was not knowing that food is medicine, but not giving it the power that it has over your thoughts. And that was just amazingly freeing. And now I can say with confidence, I eat, I will say probably 99.9% vegan or plant-based. As you said, it's more inviting plant-based. But if I'm traveling and something happens to not be vegan, I don't eat red meat. I don't eat chicken. Maybe if it has I don't know, cheese or dairy, I'm okay with that. It doesn't kill me. It's not going to kill me. I'm still here. So yeah, that's where I'm at in regards to my food habits at the moment. And as you said, I don't do the labeling anymore. I still obviously teach plant-based because I do believe plant-based heals you and it heals the world, and it's better for the environment, and it's obviously better for the animals. But most importantly, it's better for the human mind. I feel like you have more clarity, more compassion for others when you put that animal in front of you as another being. And yeah, it's been such a great journey so far. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next 2 years of my life as a chef.
Amazing. Well, can you point back to any specific research at the time that you were diagnosed with cancer and you sort of already was aware of this potential solution? Was that just from your friend, or had you been kind of delving into the world of plant-based research?
I was listening to a lot of different plant-based podcasts at the time, and there was a lot of doctors actually. The China study that was done by Dr. Campbell, it had a lot of research on plant-based, and not necessarily on cancer, but how it helped with so many different illnesses. So it was well, if cancer is an oxidative part of your metabolism in your being, if you're eating a more alkaline diet, that can only help. Mm-hmm. It won't harm you. So I was reading a lot about the cancer, the China study. There was a bunch of people at the time when YouTube was going crazy, again, 12 years ago. Fully Raw Christina was on it, and she was like talking about how like plant-based food helped her life and how she, healed her diabetes. So it was like, I've always taken it as, okay, the research can tell me a lot of things and a lot of people can tell me a lot of things, but what is my body going to say about this? Mm-hmm. And I tried a lot of things. And the only thing that seemed to help was that. I have yet to taken any medication in the past 10 years for my thyroid. And I have Hashimoto's, so I should be weighing like at least 150, 160 pounds. At least.
Most of you that can't see you,
like I eat what my body feels like it's good for it. And it has changed. What I used to eat when I was, 22, 23, it's definitely changed now that I am 35. And I am completely fine with that. Some things that I like when I was 22, my body doesn't feel the same now. And it's like, all right, then how do we change? And it's a constant progress. It's a constant discovery. And that's the beauty of the human body, that it changes so much, especially as women. We go through so many changes. It's kind of crazy. But I love the fact that we're able to experiment in ourselves. So as much as the research can say, oh, do this, like, because again, my doctors were like, well, you need to take the medication. I'm like, well, my body doesn't feel the medication is right for me. So let me try this. And if it doesn't work, then I can always go back to that, because that's the safer route. So it's been great so far. I'm very like, I'm not going to say I'm all for like not doing medicine. I believe medicine, it's like traditional medicine. Mm-hmm. It has a place for sure. But I think a combination of both is what helps you propel your health, especially when you have an autoimmune or when you have cancer, or, you have cancer. You have to have both. And it's all depending on what your body and what you physically feel that what needs to happen for you. So.
Amazing. So can you talk a little bit about, what is your process with clients in terms of teaching them intuitive eating and teaching them basically to trust their instincts, that they know what is best for their own body?
It's been, every body is so unique, and as the body is unique, your nutrition is unique. So a lot of my clients are Colombians. A lot of them are women, have gone through the same body model stigma as I've gone up. Like, it hasn't changed in the past, and it's not going to change. So like trying to navigate through, a 17-year-old girl that wants to have a liposuction is intense, because you're like, oh my God, like you're 17. Like why would you put yourself through that? Like your body hasn't even finished developing. So going through those, it's very psychologically based, and I'm sure you've gone through it as well. It takes a lot of behavioral psychology to help them understand that their body is sacred first and foremost, but also that the body knows more than the mind. And when I guide them through all these, like, and again, I'm just guiding, and they go to whichever way it feeds to their soul and what works for them. But it's very easy to understand and free your mind when you understand that your body's sacred, that you have to challenge that food police. So what I was saying is like, yeah, when you challenge the food police, when you understand that your body's sacred, that you have to take away what the values you've been installed as a culture or as a family, or because all of that plays a lot of the social stigma, plays a lot of role in how you see yourself. So it's really putting yourself in the mirror in front of it and like loving it with everything. It's the hardest thing, yes, because we're used to seeing all the flaws. We're used to seeing social media and scrolling and seeing all this beauty, that it is beautiful, but it might not be you. It might not be what your genetic is. It might not be that takes a lot of changing the mentality patterns that we have and breaking little by little. So we start with, what are the goals? Because everyone has like the goal of whether losing weight or like, okay, let's start with your goals. What do you want? This is this. Okay, how do you think you can get there? And then they start like with all these crazy ideas on how they want to get there. And like, then you start realizing, oh, okay, then we need to work again, first on the mind, and then the body will follow. Because the body knows. It's the mind that like tricks the body to like, oh, we need to go here, there. It's like, no, your body knows where it needs to go. The body works perfectly when we're sleeping. You breathe in and out. You don't even think about it. How is it that we place so much power into food when that's like the one thing, the one relationship we have for the rest of our lives? We can lose our children because they go to school, our parents because they die, you move to another country, whatever. Food is the one thing you have forever. So having to understand that relationship and how you view food and understanding that whichever food you choose has an impact on not just your body, but your mind, your feelings, the way you interact with other people, then it makes food, again, a powerful source of energy, but also takes the power that it has in your mind. And that's the process that takes a lot of repetition, day in and day out, like understanding, okay, food is challenging, to see it as a freeing mechanism because of where we're at. But I feel now there's, and you are in this as well, there's a huge, powerful movement of this mindful, intuitive eating. And my challenge is doing that in a way that's easy, fun, delicious, and plant-based. So it's as a chef understanding too, like, okay, these people like me were heavily meat eaters. How do we transform so that they feel plentiful? They still get their nutrients, they still get their protein, and feel like they're not compromising on flavor as well. Mm-hmm. Because that's the most difficult part for the most part.
So can you describe, do you work with clients in different scenarios? Like one would be you're helping a woman basically transform her identity in terms of her relationship with her body and food. And also you work as a chef, or are sometimes those things are intertwined? How does it work?
Both. Most often they're not. When I start working with a client with whichever form is, they end up being together. Either working, I work with a lot of affluent families, and they'll either have their chef. So I'll come in, as the help for the chef, training them on how to like cook plant-based. And then it's like, all right, how does this family eat? And like seeing the interaction they have with food. And sometimes I work with a restaurant, and how is the restaurant working as a whole mechanism of food vehicle to the community, and understanding, and it's also helping them understand like, okay, you as a chef and as a restaurant have the power to provide health. And most of the restaurants that come to me, obviously they want to offer a plant-based option, or they are heavily plant-based, or they're fully plant-based, but meaning plant-based doesn't have to be healthy all the time. Mm-hmm. So teaching, again, mindful, intuitive, healthy plant-based is a challenge in itself, because you can be a very junky vegan, and I have been in periods of times like, I just want to eat cookies all day long, and they're vegan, gluten-free, but they're not necessarily the most healthy, and then I'm like, why am I bloated again? I ate like a whole pack of cookies. So I work with clients only on the chef aspect of it, and they love that part of it. But I always, again, feeding with the psychology and the nutrition and why is this healthy for you? And invite them, especially if they have children, invite them in to like explore different flavors and different, textures and different vegetables and things like that. And then when I work with individuals, again, I'm not a dietitian, so I don't tell them like, this is what you need to eat, because that's what dietitians are for. But I work with dietitians into helping them, like, at least we get them into a part in their brain that they're able and open enough to understand that food is fuel and not just for satisfaction. And that's where I'm at in between the two. It's hard because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be a chef anymore, but I love being a chef. It's just this word of the psychology part of it, because I have the background in both. It's like, it's so much more rewarding than just cooking for someone.
Definitely. I can see that. So what do you feel is the biggest misconceptions that you're sort of constantly battling when you're trying to introduce someone into the plant-based world and they're not at all close to the plant-based world?
Vegan food is mainly boring salads. They don't taste like anything. Or, I get that a lot. Or, oh, but don't you guys make like that bacon that's full of like whatever crap? And it's like, both are true. They could be true, but I can teach you how they can be really delicious and healthy and not full of like different ingredients that you can't even pronounce. So yeah, those are probably the biggest things. People also get very intimidated with plant-based cooking. They think like it's too hard. It's too difficult. I don't have time to be in the kitchen for like 5 hours. You're a chef. So it's like teaching them again, like that easier part of plant-based cooking. It gets to be challenging sometimes, especially with families with kids. You know, women like, oh my God, I'm not gonna spend 5 hours in the kitchen. How am I gonna do this? And because for them it's easy, like put a piece of chicken in the oven and you're good to go. A salad on the side that you just bought prepackaged, and it's like, how am I gonna do this if I don't have the chicken? And it's all about, you know, doing the meal prepping beforehand and getting the kids involved and getting the whole family to understand the process of food, and which is something that we don't have much in the US. Actually in America, North and South, we don't have much. In Europe, it's a little bit different. Because, you know, they have the little markets in every little town, and you just go and everyone, you know, the kids are picking the vegetables, and like it's a little bit more comprehensive, I feel like. Yeah, so that's probably the two misconceptions: that it's boring, tasteless, or that it's like full of things that are not really healthy for you, and that it's difficult. So those will be the three.
And so does it help you to go back to when you, quote unquote, didn't like cooking, or you were resistant to cooking yourself in those moments where you're teaching?
Yeah. And that's what I like the most, teaching. Because I'm like, I understand. I come from that. I hated cooking. I hated being in a kitchen. And it helps because then you're in a more like, oh, okay, so you get it. It's like, yeah, I get it. And it's easy. And it's usually most people are like, so how are you cooking? Like, how are you a chef now? It's like, well, you know, just kind of found my passion in it, and it becomes easier to teach for sure.
Definitely. So what are you working on right now? What's your current maybe like sub-fascination? Are you studying anything or?
My current baby is a couple things. I am going to start a master's in medical nutrition. Starts in May. Wow. At the University of Arizona. So I definitely want to take my nutrition knowledge up a notch, and working with doctors and dietitians. Again, they're so medically based, which is great, but sometimes the psychological and emotional part of eating is forgotten. And I feel like medical nutrition, it's like, okay, the best of both worlds, but I can bring in like the most emotional part of bringing them together. Mm-hmm. That is not like, oh, you have to eat this, you have to do this. It's like, all right. So that's my biggest project for the next 2 years as a student, which is huge. I haven't been in school in like that in a long time. And I'm excited, really excited for that. And then I'm actually going to start writing a book with a dietitian. So it's going to be like a cooking nutrition book. It'll be a fun, exciting project. And I'm doing a lot more online classes. So they're mainly, you know, they're 100% plant-based, but they're mainly based on, okay, we're cooking this, and these are like the nutrition aspects that will help your cooking and your nutrition be more plant-based and don't be intimidated by it. So those are like the biggest 3 things that I have going on this year.
I love it. And if they want to work with you, where are you most? What's the best way to connect with you?
Probably online, because I travel between Miami and Barcelona, which is where I'm based. But my website for sure, nathitoro.com, and Instagram for sure. And yeah, reach out, open for questions, tips, whatever they want as far as cooking or nutrition or psychology. I'm all into that for sure.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Is there any last sort of parting words you want to leave us with about your experience?
Yeah, I think, again, like, as I said before, food is so unique. It makes who we are as a culture. It makes who we are as a person, as an individual. And we also have to treat it like that. And so be as compassionate with yourself, as gentle with yourself as you are with others, and as respectful with your own body as you are with so many other things in your life. And the body will follow. The body knows. Sometimes we don't have to control that. It's like, let it be more, a little bit more free and a little bit more flowy. And that's when things start, getting better, whether you're dealing with an illness or not. It really makes a huge difference when you're letting go of the control of like, this is what I need to eat and this is the portion. Honoring our health and doing gentle nutrition is probably my biggest advice to people.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time and for being here, and we'll be in touch.
Yes, absolutely. We'll love to do another one.
Awesome. Well, we'll schedule a follow-up and we'll let everyone know. So thanks again, Nathi.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much for listening to Energetically You. I hope that this episode has helped you to tune into your natural energy sources so that you feel more energized and focused throughout your day. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to help more ambitious women just like you accomplish their goals. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it on social or in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Megan Swan Wellness. See you soon.